Who was Joseph Loomis?
Joseph Loomis was a woolen draper who came from England with his wife Mary White in 1638 aboard the ship the Susan and Ellen. A woolen draper is one who makes or sells cloths. A dealer in cloths as a linen draper or woolen draper who deals with wool.
Joseph Loomis and Mary White had 5 sons who carried on the Loomis name.
Joseph, John, Thomas, Nathaniel, and Samuel.
Here's a few people that descended from Joseph Loomis and Mary White's son, John.
Alfred Lebbeus Loomis, Henry Patterson Loomis, Alfred Lee Loomis, and Henry Loomis.
Although our direct line to John is yet to be confirmed, notice the family resemblance in these next images.
Henry Loomis was appointed director of the Voice of America in 1958 by President Dwight D. Eisenhower, resigning from the post in 1965 after policy conflicts with President Lyndon B. Johnson, and was appointed by Richard Nixon in 1972 to serve as president of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The Loomis homestead in Windsor, Connecticut is one of the oldest timber frame houses in America.
The oldest part of the house was built in 1640 by Joseph Loomis.
Later additions to the Loomis house were made around the turn of the 18th century.
Did you know Joseph Loomis's son John was a deacon?
Deacon John was born in England in 1622, died September 1st, 1688, and is buried at Windsor, Connecticut. He was in Windsor before 1640 and was admitted to the church there October 11th, 1640. On May 3rd, 1642, he received a grant for 40 acres at the plantation in Windsor. He was a deacon of the Windsor Church and deputy from Windsor to the General Court from 1666 to 1667.
John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave.
Deacon John Loomis was the third great-grandfather of John Brown, 1800 to 1859.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. But his soul goes marching on. The stars above in heaven are looking kindly down. The stars above in heaven are looking kindly down. The stars above in heaven are looking kindly down on the grave of old John Brown. Glory, glory, hallelujah.
John Brown was born May 9th, 1800 in Torrington, Connecticut. He was the fourth of the 8 children of Owen Brown and Ruth Mills and grandson of Captain John Brown. In 1850, the United States passed the notorious Fugitive Slave Act, a law which mandated that authorities in free states aid in the return of escaped slaves and imposed penalties on those who aided in their escape. In response to the Fugitive Slave Act, John Brown founded a militant group to prevent slaves' capture, the League of Gileadites in Springfield.
In the Bible, Mount Gilead was the place where only the bravest of Israelites would gather together to face an invading enemy.
During 1856 in Kansas, Brown commanded forces at the Battle of Blackjack and the Battle of Osawatomie. Brown's followers also killed 5 pro-slavery supporters at Pottawatomie.
He captured Harper's Ferry with his 19 men so true. He frightened old Virginia till she trembled through and through. They hanged him for a traitor, they themselves the traitor crew. His soul goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul goes marching on.
It usually happens that anyone who is particularly active in bringing any of the gang to justice has his barn or dwelling soon after burned, or his horses missing from the stable, horse, sheep, or cattle from the pasture. The Loomis Gang was a notorious family of outlaws that operated in central New York during the 19th century. The patriarch of the gang, George Washington Loomis, was a descendant of the highly respected Joseph Loomis, who arrived in the U.S. from England in the early 17th century. George Washington Loomis married Rhoda Marie Mallet, daughter of an officer in the French Revolutionary Army who embezzled money from the state and then fled to the U.S. to avoid arrest. Mallet was eventually arrested and sent to prison in 1812. George Washington Loomis and his morally bankrupt wife Rhoda settled in Madison County in 1802 near the 9 Mile Swamp.
It was said that Mrs. Loomis told her children, "You may steal, but if you are caught, you shall be whipped."
In addition to training her children to lives of crime, Mrs. Loomis also saw to their education in other ways. They were all well schooled, and the leader of the children, George Loomis Jr., known as Wash, was set to read law in a lawyer's office for a time. They specialized in theft of horses and livestock rustling, but did not stick to those activities exclusively, being quite willing to deal in stolen goods, burglarize, and counterfeit money. The Loomis family itself was the nucleus of a gang composed of corruptible youths from their locality, as well as criminal elements from elsewhere. Anybody who complained to the law about the Loomis' activities ran real risk of mysterious fires on their property, and the Loomis' always had plausible alibis.
First, then the house. Light up a couple of them torches. Come on!
George Washington Loomis Sr., through the influence of his wife, Rhoda Marie Mallet, was considered to have disgraced the entire horrified Loomis family in America, and virtually every relative for the next 100 years took great pains to distance themselves and their own families from the highly distasteful matter.
contrast, and also a descendant of Deacon John Loomis.
Elias Loomis, 1811 to 1889. Elias Loomis graduated from Yale and became a professor of natural philosophy and astronomy at Yale from 1860 to August 15, 1889.
He was the first to ascertain the velocity of electricity.
He assisted in establishing the United States Weather Bureau, systematized its work, and wrote its main guidebook. His article on contributions to meteorology, as published by the United States government in 1886, is the foundation of the Weather Bureau system, including its daily maps.
More than 500,000 of his books were used in schools and colleges of the United States.
More notable cousins descended from Robert White and Bridget Algar, Mary White and Joseph Loomis, and her sister Anna White and John Porter.
Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may? Is a promise really something people kept, not just something they would say? Families really bow their heads to pray, daddies really never go away. Oh, oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Grandpa, everything is changing fast. We call it progress, but I just don't know. And Grandpa, let's wander back into the past, then paint me the picture of long ago. Lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may. Is promise really something people kept, not just something they would say and then forget? Families really bow their heads to pray, daddies really never go away. Oh, oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Oh, oh, Grandpa, about the good old days.